So we have a video here. We have a video here from Trevor Carroll, all about things that finally made sense after their autism diagnosis. Trevor is someone that I've been following on Instagram for quite a while now, and he's recently started up his YouTube channel, which seems to be doing very, very, very well. So we're gonna have a look at one of those videos. Might put my hoodie up.
Autism spectrum disorder. I was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder about a year and a half ago when I was 23 years old. And
Oh, it's a late
up to that
diagnosis.
point in my life, there were so many things that I just felt like really confused about. There were a lot of times where I felt misunderstood, or when I felt out of place, or when I just couldn't figure things out. It was really frustrating for me because I always knew that something was like different about me, but I never really had the language or the words or the knowledge to understand that I just had an autistic brain and I was trying to be a neurotypical person as a neurodivergent person.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I hear a lot about from late diagnosed individuals. You sort of live your life just kind of feeling like you're just not a competent person at things, or that you struggle with things that other people don't struggle with, and it's kind of up to you and your personality traits. That's something that I hear quite a lot. And when you do get diagnosed and you start learning about all of these things, a lot of these like little quirks, things that you would say were like a big part of your personality, things that make you kind of unique and quirky and different. You figure out very quickly that they're quite common for autistic people. And I know that when I was even though I was diagnosed, sort of a middling diagnosis around 10, even then, when I started going on social media, learning about it more, I started realizing a lot more about what being autistic was about beyond the kind of sensory social stuff, like the whole stuff with alexithymia and interoception and all sorts of different things. So let's see what he's got to say about this.
And since receiving the autism diagnosis at age 23, there were so many things that just clicked and so many things that made so much more sense. And I was like, oh, that explains that. This explains why I'm like that and that and that and that. So I actually made this list a while back, soon after I received my autism diagnosis, but I thought I would share it with you in this YouTube video today. And it's titled Things That Make Sense Since Getting My ASD Diagnosis. So before I go through the list, I just want to make it super clear that this is not
ADHD.
These are not like the diagnostic tools to meet the autism criteria. These are just simply
Then almost everything makes sense.
This is just simply my experience and things that I think could be related to my.
But it really depends though on what kind of content you look at, to be honest. Because I don't know about you, but when I was a part of the autistic community, probably started watching stuff from other people about 8-9 years ago. The amount of knowledge that has been gained since then, like just the sort of common pop kind of psych stuff around it, is monumental. A lot of the stuff actually that we see quite commonly today on Instagram and things like that and they're not always stuff that's been around. Like people within the community when it was first sort of put together, maybe not the right word. First, when I first joined it, there was lots of attempts from different people trying to make connections between autism and like different co-occurring conditions and such. Because that's just one piece of the puzzle you find very quickly with autism, is that you understand autism, but then on top of that, there are these lists of different co-occurring conditions, different experiences that can sort of change and morph the way that you react. And like there's different sort of things that you can experience. You can be PDA, so you can be have pathological demand avoidance, RSD, rejection sensitivity. Alexithymia is actually one of those things that's really high sort of co-occurring with autism. I had to learn about other mental health conditions and deep dive for about 2 years to compare and contrast what and how they're all different though, to try and grasp it better. And I kind of brush it all out though, still working on it. That's the thing, it's learning about it and applying it to your own life are like two very different things. Because we all have our own sort of internal experiences, ways of understanding ourselves that, you know, we got prior to learning that we're autistic, or along the way that we just don't fully connect. I bring up alexithymia a lot because I actually created a lot of videos in the past about how I feel like my brain's sort of split in two. That I have like my logical brain and my emotional brain. And it was only when I came across alexithymia, sort of that difficulty, sort of understanding the intensity and the emotion that you're feeling, not having as much sort of connection to your own emotions, that I started to realize and sort of backtrack and look at like different parts of my life, like on, you know, I used to think I had multiple personalities because I would basically split my personality into colors. So I'd have like red as angry and blue as like a little bit chill, black as like very nihilistic, and you know, and all sorts. I'd have lots of different colors basically to communicate to other people what personality I was in, because I couldn't feel the emotion that other people usually could. It's very, very complicated. Yeah, my therapist said the other day, like, do you know the difference between being tired, sick, and burnt out? And I was like, isn't it all the same? I feel like I could do that for you. I think tiredness, you have sleepiness, don't you? And that's when you want to go to sleep. And you feel like you just want to put your head down, and if you do, you'll nod off. Tiredness, sort of a exasperated feeling in your chest and your body, burnt out, a mixture of tiredness and anxiety and a little bit of confusion. I think that's how I would explain it. No worries at all. I'm sorry that I've gone through and deleted all of them, but I am thinking of creating some more videos again in the future. I think it might be time to do it now that I've got kind of my whole setup here and everything. It could be something that I delve into. I'm not too sure. Same, you were how I learned about alexithymia definitely explains a lot, and processing delays as well. Processing delays is quite a big one for sure. Sort of making it difficult in conversation when you sort of process things like 1 second later to other people. It makes group situations really, really difficult. Anyway, back to Trevor.
Autism, and of course, non-autistic people might experience some of these things on the list. They might experience all these things on the list, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that person is or isn't autistic. This is just my list, coming from my own experience. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing on my list is constantly dropping things and running into walls. I've always described myself as a clumsy person. I very much lack coordination, especially when it comes to like sports and things like that. I'm always accidentally injuring myself, whether it's stubbing my toe, bruising my leg by running into like the counter or something. I'm always bumping into walls. I have a hard time like telling the space around me. I'm always like tripping over my own legs. I'm often spilling my water, like taking a sip of water and it just completely missing my mouth and dumping down my chest. I'm constantly knocking things over. These are things that happen like every single day. It's kind of funny when I was a kid growing up and I would like spill something or I would do something really clumsy. We'd kind of joke in my house. We'd say every day, because this is something that happens to me pretty much every day. And then when receiving my autism diagnosis, I was kind of like, oh, okay, that makes sense. Autism could be an explanation for my lack of coordination.
There's a bit of a difficulty. I don't know if you guys have come across this and doing your own little, that sounds very patronizing, doing your own readings into things, but for some reason, I can't seem to find much of a separation in literature between people who are ADHD and autistic and people who have dyspraxia. It seems like it's something that comes part in part with autism or ADHD. That's one thing. But in terms of the clumsiness, you have two different things that I could maybe help explain. The first one is you have a sense called proprioception, which is essentially your awareness of your body in space. It can have a lot of impacts on things like driving, walking, proximity to other people. You have some autistic people who have a bit of a difficulty with either being very sensitive to being close to people or very insensitive and, you know, being very close to people in conversations. but you can have hypersensitivity in that and hyposensitivity. You also have your vestibular sense, which is your sense of balance. And you can understand what your vestibular sense is by, well, I can actually show you because I'm on live stream. You can do it by grabbing onto something. Wait, let me change my camera. Grabbing onto something, hopefully, so you don't actually fall over, and lifting the leg up and just balancing on one leg. Like with your actual eyes, I find that when I'm walking, I'm pretty much always looking down at the floor. If I don't look at the floor, I tend to trip over myself and stuff. But basically what you can do, you can hold on to this and then go on one leg, hold on to this specifically, go on one leg and close your eyes and see what the difference is between your balance between them. And generally your sense of your vestibular sense is what's needed when you close your eyes, you know. So it gives you an idea of what that's like. And it can actually be hypersensitive. So then you might get people who have what would you say? Like they have issues when it comes to like car sickness and, you know, boats and stuff like that. And it can be insensitive as well. So you can struggle with your balance. And I think both struggle with balance with vestibular stuff, but just in just different ways. But basically, those are the two senses that are involved in the sort of clumsiness thing. And I'm not sure whether you can separate autism ADHD from dyspraxia. At least from what I've seen, it seems to be something that is pretty tightly knit, as with like many things to do with autism. But that might give you a bit of an insight. But you can do some training to do with it, but it tends to be more of a muscular thing. So like I have a habit of tripping over myself a lot, but I don't have a habit of falling over a lot. And that's mostly because I used to do taekwondo. I'm very used to being on one leg and doing my kicks and, you know, leg control and stuff like that. The difference between me being a balanced individual and me being able to catch myself after I fall is very, very different. And that's because I do struggle with the vestibular proprioceptive stuff. Interesting thing is that I would encourage anyone to do, if you find that you have a hyposensitivity, so you're insensitive to something, try working in some stims related to that insensitivity. You might find that it actually gives your body the input that it's looking for. Because if you imagine most people are going about their day getting a certain amount of input from their body and, you know, moving in space and their balance, you know, that's generally quite normal for human beings. But if you're insensitive, maybe you might be lacking that a bit more. So for me, spinning, wait, just have to take my headphones off. Spinning is pretty much the cocaine of life for me. I absolutely love it. It regulates me like nothing else, pretty much. And I used to do it a lot when I was younger. I would sort of stand on one leg and I would like pirouette like a ballerina. But now I've got an actual chair that I can use. So hooray! Oh, and just kick over my. But basically, that is how I regulate a lot of the time. I do need to charge up my headphones so I can do that on stream. But yeah, for sure. Also, when it comes to coordination, you have different types of coordination. You have gross motor coordination and you have fine motor. So fine motor is like the more artsy kind of scalpel, paintbrush, drawing, tattoo gun kind of thing. Generally the skill is very different to something like sports, you know, like throwing a ball or, you know, using a racket or something like that. They're all different types of sort of coordination. And I think they are to do with sort of your awareness of your body in space, but obviously like to do with your muscles as well, for sure. I started ice skating. It's very fulfilling meeting those sensory needs. Also terrifying due to terrible depth perception. That is one thing that I imagine that's something to do with proprioception as well, for sure. You know, knowing how far objects are away from you. Build a massive habit of standing on one leg when I'm stood up, reading about it being a centering thing and sensory processing. Aye, for sure. Although I started speech therapy again recently, she said that some of the clumsiness, spilling, eating, choking was a muscular and structural thing. It's interesting though. Yeah, that is an interesting. I mean, it's all very, very complex. Like the sensory worlds, like people like to make it kind of quite easy to digest and straightforward, but it really, really isn't. A lot of the time, there are a lot of differences in like your sensory perception of the world. even so far as lights, you know, the hue of a certain light, whether it's flashing, whether it's not, the certain sounds at certain volumes. It's all very, very different, and it's all important to have in your sensory profile. You know, I don't think it's optimal to just have sensitive to light. Yes. What type of light? Because I very much enjoy my disco lights. Thank you.
My struggles with my spatial awareness, with just understanding where my body is in space and things like that. So that was a big thing that made sense since receiving my autism diagnosis. The next thing on my list are my intense interests and passions. Some autistic people are known for having like special interests or just like really passionate about the things that we like. I've always had very unique and super passionate interests, and the things that have stuck with me for most of my life, ever since I was a kid, are fitness.
Yep. Good one. Especially
nature slash weather. And as I'm looking outside, it's a cloudy, rainy day today. I love storms. I'm always like tracking the storms, especially when there's like thunderstorms or big snowstorms. I love to watch the radar. I love to read all about it. I love to see what's happening when it comes to the weather, and music. Ever since I was a kid, I was so passionate about music. I always wanted to be like a radio DJ. Like I wanted to like play different music. And when I was like a kid, I would just sit at the computer for hours and hours and hours.
Also, on the music front, guys, I will send you a Spotify link because I have so many playlists on my profile that it feels silly not to try and share it with people. So I am going to send you my profile. If you would like to listen to my music, some of them are not like completely. There you go. Oh, hopefully it'll actually send it. You can check out my profile. I think most of my playlists are public, so if you want to check out my music, you're very welcome to. I do like me dark trap. I do like me metal. But I also like other stuff. Go check it out. I am very into music. I actually, if you go on my profile, I'll try and put it in the description on the clip. But if not, I'll just comment or something, and I'll try and put it in. And basically, what I would do, because of my alexithymia, because I struggle so much reporting like what my mental health is like how much sort of depression I feel, or anxiety I feel, I would basically create playlists together of different songs that I would relate to at different emotional states, so that I could understand what level I was, like severe, moderate, mild, dysphoric. And that basically helps me quite a lot, knowing it's kind of at the point in my life where I've analyzed and tried to understand my emotions so much that I don't need to do that anymore. I might make a video on that at some point, but you can do it. Like, even if you have alexithymia, it is possible to like find different ways of knowing what emotional state you're in, for sure. Didn't think I was into spinning. Forgot one of my fitness obsessions was pole dancing. I was wrong. No, I love those like fabricy ones where you can just like spin around on them. I love those so much. Channel the moods, for sure.
Making my own music, mixing different music,
researching different songs. My own music.
And yes, of course, non-autistic people can have these interests, and they do have these interests. I think the difference is just the extent to which we as autistic people have these interests. Like, my entire life is based around these three things. These three things are what bring me so much joy and so much purpose into my life. And without these things, I don't even know what I would do. That's how passionate I am about these things. That's how much I love these things. That's how much I love learning about these things and doing these things. The next thing on my list is my rigid thinking and my extreme need for routine.
Rigid thinking.
This is a big one, and something that I'm constantly working on because of the fact that everything is always changing in life. Things are always evolving. There's always going to be a change of plans. Things are almost certainly never going to go to plan, even if it's just small, subtle changes. And these sort of things can be really dysregulating for me. And I really like to be in my routine. I pretty much do almost the same thing every single day. I follow almost the same routine every single day. And it's still, to this day, even after working on this and trying to find different ways to regulate, it's still really hard when things don't go to plan, or when there isn't a plan, when I don't know what to expect. Part of it is an anxiety piece, and that's the piece that I can work on. And then I think the other part of it is it's just how the way my brain works. I get stuck on certain things. It's like I'm on the highway in my brain, and there's all these exits, but I can't see them. I'm just passing all these exits, and I just can't get off that highway, and I just get so stuck in my ways that it can be really hard to...
I think that's a lot to do with adrenaline, because like our human brains, we haven't been designed to work in our modern world. Like generally what our brains are designed for, what brains are designed for is movement. That was like the initial thing that brains, neurons were developed. Sensory perception, movement. When you start getting into these weird sort of dystopian realities that we're in, where, you know, we're watching someone on a screen talking about someone else on a screen at a different point in time, or like we're trying to put together multiple different things and create words and images and icons on a page in order to express our thoughts and feelings, and also be able to do that to a deadline. That's when stuff gets a bit difficult, because a lot of the time our optimum emotional state is not to be pumped full, jacked full of adrenaline, you know, unless we're doing like some kind of like racing sport, I suppose. But even then you could argue it's probably not a good idea to be fully, you know, jacked up on adrenaline. The problem with adrenaline is that when you feel it, like you feel anxiety, you know, usually as like cortisol. That's what I think of it as, sort of that background level of cortisol. With anxiety, right, when you get to that point where you're trying really hard to do something, or you're like stuck at a certain point in your routine, your adrenaline can kick in, because your body and your mind is wanting you to get this task over and done with, basically. Like you see it as literally the equivalent of like a tiger that you need to overcome. And the problem with that, if it was actually a tiger, you'd be running away, you know, or you'd be fighting. When it comes to like doing some work, some housework or something, being high on adrenaline doesn't lead to very good cognitive function, especially for like really complex tasks. So it can kind of lead you to what's called persevate, the way you sort of do the same thing over and over again. And for me, a good way of me managing my meltdowns, especially when I'm trying to work, when I'm trying to do something, is by being aware of when I persevate. So if I'm, let me give you an example. Trying to think of an example. I'm trying to finish, I don't know, I'm trying to write a book. You know, I'm trying to do some writing, and I can't think of the best way to end off this story. So I delete it, and then I rewrite the same thing over and over again, constantly trying to figure out different ways to do it. Or perhaps my computer's not working, or my favorite game isn't loading. So I continuously exit out of it, go back onto it, check that it's working. It's not working, exit out of it, check again, open it up. When I start to do that and I can feel my anxiety rising and I feel stressed, that is when I stop. That is when I have to stop. And every fiber of my being is wanting me to complete this task so that I can apply myself to this routine that I've created for myself. But it's really not like the best way of going about it, especially when you start perseverating and your anxiety gets that high. That's one tip that I can give you that's helped me out a ton, especially preventing meltdowns and panic attacks. Because it can happen, especially if you're like at uni, at school, you've got exams to do, when you've got revision to do, can be a real big problem. It was for me. It led to a lot of difficult situations for me.
To step out of that.
Because
when I'm out of that, that's when I do feel really dysregulated. And this kind of leads me to my next thing, which I pretty much already touched on, which is I don't do well with change. I have a really hard time when plans change. And I've always like wondered like why this is, specifically because of my autism. I think part of it is like I think it's called like monotropism,
Yep.
which is like sort of like my rigid one-sided way of thinking.
Well, monotropism is to do with one's concentration, basically. If you're monotropic, you find it much easier to focus on one thing and do it very intensely for a large period of time. If you're polytropic, you tend to be good at multitasking. Autistic people tend to be a lot more monotropic.
And then it's just like, I think there's also like a sensory aspect of it where like I prepare myself to be accommodated in all different scenarios, and then when that doesn't go to plan, then I almost certainly will get overwhelmed or overstimulated, and then it's just like, it's really hard to get out of that, and it's just a really uncomfortable state to be in.
Oh, bless him.
The next thing on my list is feeling so exhausted after socializing. There were so many times in my past, even when I was a child, where I would feel so fatigued and so drained, and I didn't know why.
Depression.
And looking back now at the patterns, it's because a lot of times I was really tired just from being in social settings and or overstimulating settings. When it comes to socializing for me, it feels like I have to be like fully on and fully alert, and it requires so much brain power because it's really unnatural for me.
Well, I think it, like, socializing is an important part of every person's life to a certain degree. Like, we're social, although we are autistic, some of us, we are also social animals. We do require some type of input from other people, some type of conversation in a sense. I feel like a lot of the problems that autistic people face actually come from the pressure that we put on ourselves to get everything right, to do like a good job, to be like a socialite extrovert. I know that for me, one of the biggest hurdles for socializing was, needing to like lock down friends. I go to a party, I go to a social event. I feel like I have to, if I'm trying to make friends, I feel like I just used to latch on to like one person and not sort of give things room to breathe to see if like the other person is interested in me too. So generally the approach that I take to socializing nowadays, especially like in groups of people, is it is literally going about and I sort of describe it as giving people your business card. Not putting your eggs too much in one basket, going about socializing with other people, because I've noticed that for a lot of neurotypicals, a lot of their likelihood and their feeling of safety and comfort comes from observing you also in other social situations as well. So generally that's one piece of information that might be quite useful. Another piece is trying to be yourself. And when people say be yourself, I don't mean like just that old bog standard saying of, be yourself, be who you truly are. I mean like literally your social style of communication. You'll find that if you try to be that extroverted person, that if you're not like that, it's not really going to go that well unless maybe you've had a drink of alcohol or something, So generally, but for me, I try to be a bit more of a listening person, like sitting back, trying to ask questions, let people talk. It generally goes against a lot of what other people talk about in making friendships and things like that. But I actually find that if you're in like a group situation, actually going through and chipping in whenever it seems right, or it seems like there's a lull in the conversation, can actually be a really good way of interacting with other people, especially if you are kind of more of the introverted type of person. It takes the pressure off, because I think the biggest problem, the biggest roadblock to feeling good in social situations is anxiety. It just is. It's the social anxiety. It's thinking, does this person like me? How am I going to get a friend? It's the pressure that you put on yourself and other people to like set up some kind of social contracts. It's not just good enough to talk to somebody and have a good chat and then move on and talk to someone else. It's kind of, if you feel like you're trying to make friends, it's almost like you're just trying to lock people down, and that puts a lot of pressure on other people and yourself, for actually things to develop a lot more naturally. Because the thing is, you don't want to be ending up in a situation where you're in this sort of very heavy, anxious, avoidant type of relationship with somebody where they're not really that interested in talking to you, but you sort of pressure them and you're asking to see them. And ideally, you want to try and find someone who, things do feel a little bit more natural and equal. And you can do that by not putting all your eggs in one basket and just trying to go with things a bit more. That may mean if you're going to like an event, special interest event, literally just exchanging 10 sentences, you know, in a group, or maybe 3 questions with another person and moving on to another person. Little things like that, like just little actions of connection gives you the opportunity to see who wants to make a conversation with you, wants to make a connection with you, without having all that pressure to like impress someone so much that they just want to constantly talk to you. That's my little tidbit, social information. That's what I've gathered, and it does work for me. Maybe give it a go if you're struggling with the old friendship department.
Socializing is something that I have to do, feels like I have to do more manually as opposed to like intuitively. And no matter how much I learn about social cues and just like how to have conversations with people, that doesn't really help me, because it just means I have more to think about in social settings, which means that requires even more brain power, and it makes me even more exhausted afterwards.
Yeah.
And when I say exhausted,
it's approached
it's
like a
not
game.
like,
That's the
"Oh,
problem.
I'm just tired today from going out last night." It's more like I can't get out of bed the next day, or even a few days after that. I feel so fatigued.
It's masking.
I can't function in the ways that I need to.
Or maybe it's not. I don't know.
And so on.
Don't want to say that.
So yeah.
But I know that whenever I feel like that, for sure, it's because I'm trying to impress people. I'm trying to like put on a persona. It doesn't necessarily need to be like I'm masking my autism for it to be exhausting. Like sometimes it is just overextending yourself for the benefit of like trying to make friends or trying to make a good impression, or you know, anything like that. People can feel like that anyway. It's just a lot more intense for us because, you know, as you said, a lot of these socially things that just kind of come natural to other people are things that we have to learn cognitively and like implement into like a skill, essentially. It's not really something that's lined out in our brain, like something that we're just born with and we just pick up diffusely from other people. Quite often it's something that you've got to think about and understand how to like practically use all the theory that you've understood in order to use it in a social context, and it is actually really exhausting, to be honest. I feel them on that one. There's a name for it. I can't remember what the name for it was. Cognitively, there's a name for when you think about things in order to do them. I can't remember what it is. Maybe it's like little and big thinking. I think there's a book about that was quite helpful for me. But there is a name for it. I just lost my tongue, slip my tongue, whatever you say.
It can be really challenging, especially considering that society is social and humans are social creatures. The next thing kind of relates to that also, which is not knowing.
I'm just going to take off my hoodie. I'm now warm again. This is like a proper thing with autism, the whole interoception thing. Also heat. Alexithymia quite often gets lumped in with interoception, and there is a reason for that, because our body signals emotionally also interlink with our physical experiences. So interoception is to do with things like hunger, things to do like internal sickness, pain. It can be due to temperature, amongst other things that I can't remember because I've skipped my mind. It's been the first time that I've come back in a while. I need to start reading up again. Using Megan Neff's resources, which I highly recommend you do too. There's links to it down in the description if you want to go check it out. And you can use code Henley25. Whether you're a psychologist or someone wanting to get a more complex understanding, or just get a rough overview of the things that you can implement, Megan Neff's stuff is really great, and I highly recommend going and checking out the podcast on Spotify. So yes, I snuck it in there. Getting all right at this. Getting back in the flow state. Oh, I also got, as well as getting my my chain, I also got a little sort of Jack Skellington sort of ear stud thing. I don't know if you can see it properly, but I've been trying to accessorize a little bit more recently, so hopefully it's paying off. I do really like this necklace.
How to socialize and having a blank mind in conversations, especially when I was a kid. People would like talk to me and I wouldn't know how to respond. I wouldn't know what to say. And it's not like social anxiety where I was like scared of saying the wrong thing. It was more that like I didn't know
Yeah,
how
it's
to
not
respond.
inbuilt,
I didn't
not
know
like
what to say.
learned transiently from other people.
And I think it kind of turned into social anxiety over the years because of me not saying anything,
Yeah.
or me potentially saying the wrong thing and not wanting to do that, not wanting the
Yeah, for sure.
judgment, or just being fearful of the judgment by others. And to this day, like, again, socializing
To
is
this
so
day.
unnatural for me, and I have to be on. I have to be alert in order to socialize, or like I feel like my natural way to socialize is just to not respond to people unless it's something that I'm really interested in talking about, or if I really do have a lot of energy to talk about whatever it is. All the other times, it's like my natural reaction is to not respond, and so I have
Are you
to
guys
like
comfortable with silence?
tell myself, oh, someone's talking to you. Let's think about what they're saying.
I am.
And let's generate a response. That's how it feels to me.
Should we have a go? Should we have a test to see who's uncomfortable with silence?
And the next...
You ready? All right. It's a little bit different over the screen, isn't it? But the uncomfortable silence thing it's a weird one because it really depends on who I'm around, to be honest. I did break first. The uncomfortable silence thing. It's really dependent on the other person for me, because some people can be like really hyper vigilant about making sure every single block of silence is filled with something. But when you get two autistic people together, you'll realize that you have very long conversations that are sort of like pass the ball kind of conversations, where one person speaks for like 1 minute, 2 minutes, 5 minutes, even just in a string, and then the other person picks out a little thing from there and they talk about that. And then like in between, you'll just have moments of silence that just feel completely fine. And it's absolutely glorious. Absolutely glorious. It's not something that I find that neurotypicals enjoy very much. They seem to really struggle with it. I don't know if you guys are okay with it or not. Be interesting to gather a survey on it.
Thing, again, relating to socializing, is I script out conversations in my head and I ruminate on past conversations. This is where I think some of the social anxiety might tie into it. I definitely don't have social anxiety now as an adult. It's taken me a long way to get here, but even now, it's like I almost just like automatically try to script out conversations before they happen, especially if it's like me going to a new place or there's going to be new people and I don't really know what to expect. Like, for example, when ordering at a restaurant, I'm replaying in my head, I will have the pizza or whatever. Like, can I please have and I'm like replaying that in my head, and then when the server comes up and asks me what I want, I repeat.
People think I'm mad or upset when I'm quiet, but I don't mind silence just existing. Yeah. You'll find it the most difficult around people who are very anxious attached. That's sometimes the hardest set of conversations for autistic people. Someone who's like really wanting some kind of like emotional reassurance or validation, it can be a really, really difficult time.
Keep that verbatim. Now, the issue is, a lot of times conversations don't necessarily go to plan. And this is when it comes back to me having to manually think of a response, and then delayed processing, taking a few seconds to generate a response. I'll often say, oh, what was that? Oh, I didn't quite hear you. What did you say? Not because I didn't hear them, but because I hadn't processed what that person said. And it's like giving myself more time to manually generate a response, if that makes sense. The next thing on my list, and this is a really big one for me, always has been.
I feel like the processing really depends on my emotional state. Like sometimes I can be really on it with things, like especially in this live stream, very on it with things just coming to my brain and then just speaking. Whereas that sometimes when my anxiety is really high and I'm in my head a lot, that's when the processing delays start to happen a lot more. But again, like there's always like a little bit of a delay when it comes to speaking for me, usually by about a second or two. And it really can, especially if someone is uncomfortable with silence, it can really disrupt the flow of conversation, leading to like a lot of those like awkwardy moments that people describe. You speak over each other, interrupt each other. It happens so much with me to the point where, again, like this is another thing. Just being comfortable is usually like the best way of dealing with situations like that, because as soon as you start to worry too much about things like that happening, like interrupting, that then it becomes something that kind of persists and sort of, I don't want to say destroys, but like poisons the conversation a little bit, the energy. Usually it happens for me a lot. I interrupt people and I say, oh, sorry, go on. And if they say, oh, you go on, then I'll speak, because else you get into situations when neither of you can remember. But that's another thing. Just living in it. You know, if you have this trait where you do interrupt people, you do process things a bit slower, just be in it. You know, if other people don't like it, then, you know, don't talk to them, but don't put pressure on yourself to do it. As soon as you start putting pressure on yourself to socialize, it stops becoming something of an outlet, something that's good for you, and becomes more like a chore, something that exhausts you. I think that's the really big key, like between introversion and extroversion, you know, because if you can have a really nice, good conversation with someone, you know, for like an hour or two, then it can actually be quite invigorating sometimes for me, which I think is where the extroversion comes in. Whereas other times, if it's something that's really difficult that I feel like I have to prove myself, I have to like force myself to speak, then it becomes an issue. Like even with things like live streaming, like I'm not really thinking too much about having to speak at every different point, but if it comes naturally to me and I say it, it feels good. If I feel like I have to force it, or I have to ask a question, or if I'm just trying to fill the silence, then it becomes sort of like my energy is being taken, you know? A lot of people misunderstand like the concepts of extroversion and introversion as well. Introverts don't necessarily like to have time alone, although a lot of them do. But introversion and extroversion is actually a characterization of where you retain your energy from. So if you find that you exit conversations feeling really energized and invigorated, it's likely that you're a bit more of an extrovert. If you find that in your alone time you find a lot of energy, you get a lot of energy from that, then you're likely an introvert. So actually, for me, I'm sort of in the middle, because I get both of them. Like, I get infused to talk more the more that I speak. Sometimes to my own detriment, especially if I've been doing it all day. But generally, that is me. Like, I'm sort of a mix of the two. It really depends on where you get your energy from, you know. And not all autistic people are introverted, although I imagine that a lot of us are.
And still is to this day getting overwhelmed by smells, sounds, certain clothings, bright lights, etc. I definitely do have a lot of sensory sensitivities that if left unaccommodated, or if I don't remove either the sensory stimulus, or if I don't remove myself from the situation, it will lead to sensory overload and overstimulation, which may also lead to me like having an autistic shutdown or an autistic meltdown. And
shutdowns for everybody, complete shut off in terms of your ability to talk. Sometimes it's kind of graded. Generally, you become a lot more internal, a lot of dissociation. Meltdowns, a lot more energetic, a lot of emotional expression, a lot of chaos. One is expressive, one is more internal. Generally, that's just a small way of understanding the difference. Both can be uncomfortable. Shutdowns, in my opinion, are a little bit more protective. They sort of stop me from having meltdowns. Anyway.
For a long time, like before my autism diagnosis, I didn't really know how to describe these feelings of being overstimulated. And a lot of times I didn't really even know what was causing the overstimulation. I think for me, like as a kid, some of the biggest things were smells. That's always been a big one for me. Even if they're not bad smells, but just like any smell that is like overpowering, it's like all my brain can think of and focus on in that moment, which can lead me to feeling distracted. And then also it's like, because it's so overpowering and it requires a lot of like
smells aren't
activity in my brain, it does feel really overstimulating a lot. And smells, I think, has been and continues to be,
I do have a very
like,
sensitive
the biggest
nose,
sensory challenge for me. I think the second highest one for me is lighting and bright lights, especially
that's the biggest
like
one for me.
bright overhead white fluorescent lights or like LED lights. A lot of places are switching out their lights to like the LED lights. I hate those. Those are the worst. Like I can see them flickering, especially like the bluish whitish tint ones. Not only does it like I don't even know how to describe it. It's not just like slightly uncomfortable, it's like unbearable. And once I received my autism diagnosis, I was like, oh, this is sensory overload. This is overstimulation. Now I can pay attention to what things are causing this, what my body's telling me in regards to this, so I can try to...
One of the things that I hear a lot from like people who are outside of the autistic community is that a lot of these things that we talk about in terms of lighting and overstimulation, they're also things that other people experience too. The important difference is the intensity of that. Like, do you become mildly distracted by a noise in the background, or does it completely overload you and cause you to feel like a sense of dread or anxiety? That is the difference. For me, my hypersensitivities, light, noise, that's a really big thing for me. Light and noise are both things that I struggle with a lot. The sharp pain and the soft touch and stuff is something that I can find actually quite painful. Like if someone was to like rub in my hand in like the same position over and over again, after a while it becomes like almost sore, like almost painful. And I don't really know how to describe that feeling. I don't know if it's something that neurotypicals experience too. I'd be interested to know if you guys also experience that. And I think that's probably due to sensitization, just like how sensitive like the nerves are. But one of the problems for autistic people is that we don't habituate as much as other people. And habituation basically means getting used to something. So a lot of people, when they might enter a bar or something, if they're going, I'm doing a lot of alcohol references. I don't go out that much. Just letting you know, I'm not an alkie. But yeah, if people are making noise, and it's very consistent noise, like sort of background noise at a bar or a restaurant, a lot of people will tune that out. It will basically not have as big of an impact on both what they can hear. They can they have almost like a noise filter, for things. Whereas for someone like me, I don't habituate all that much. So I can actually, hear things at the same volume for like a large period of time. It doesn't sort of die down for me. And as well, if I'm having a conversation with somebody and there is I'm trying to do like a noise. There's a little noise in the background that's sort of, I can sort of gather is happening. If it's small enough, and it's sort of in the background, it doesn't necessarily matter what the volume of that thing is. It still gets my attention as much as something else of another volume does. So it becomes very difficult to like lock on to any specific conversation, even if they're like directly in front of me. Yeah, noise, too much going around, light, feels like tinfoil crunching, it hurts. Yeah, people say just don't pay attention. It's like, can't, yeah, exactly. And that's the habituation, and it's actually is one of the reasons. It's one of the things that is actually different between us and neurotypicals. We don't habituate as much, and so the whole just get used to it, mate. Just get exposure to it. It doesn't actually have as much of an impact as you think it would. It's generally not the best way of going about things. Doesn't mean that you can't get used to an environment and used to the noise and sort of prevent some of the anxiety that you feel from it. It's just that it doesn't die down. Like your brain doesn't tune it out.
Stop it before it becomes too late. The next thing on my list, and this isn't like autism specific, there are people who have this who aren't autistic and vice versa, but synesthesia. So
interesting.
The way I describe synesthesia is it's like my senses almost become intertwined and mixed. This especially happens when listening to music. Not only do I like feel the vibrations and the music in my body, but like I can visualize it. I see the music in colors, shapes, and patterns. I think that's one of the reasons why I really do enjoy music, because it's like a full body experience. Another way I experience synesthesia is like when it comes to numbers.
Well, I sort of have that experience. The reason why I was staring into the distance, because I was trying to visualize what he was saying, but I don't know if I don't think I have synesthesia. I think I just have like a very active imagination. If anybody has synesthesia in the chat or in the comments, do you actually visually see colors as you listen to things, or is it like in your mind's eye? Because I'd be really interested to know. Because I know that there was this guy who basically made a map of the London Underground based on like, and he said that the noises from the train in different stations had like different smells to them. So he like went round and he made like a map of all the different smells that were at each of the different stations in London. I've also had someone talk to me who has synesthesia, who said that my color was blue. That apparently I've got a blue voice. I'd be interested to know what they think now. But it's interesting, isn't it? I don't know exactly what the experience is, because I imagine that it's it's part and part of having synesthesia, isn't it? Like I am not sure. Not sure. A very interesting experience, though.
For me, in my mind, like, numbers have a color associated with them. Same with days of the week. Same with the different months. I think those are like the main ways this shows up for me, which I think is kind of cool. It's like my brain's way of like organizing and categorizing and experiencing.
So it's a mental
information.
Or,
the next thing on my list of things that make sense since getting my ASD diagnosis is why I am literally always anxious.
Yeah. When generalized anxiety is, I think, one of the highest comorbidities for autism. It's very, 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 very common. Other than alexithymia, actually. Alexithymia is about, last time I looked at something, it was about 90%. It's quite a lot. Figured out a few years back that I actually visualize in my brain. I actually can't visualize in my brain much at all. My brain is very audiocentric, and it's like having Alexa in my head. Rubbish at remembering people's facial features and colours and things. I have the opposite problem. I'm really good at remembering faces. Like I have an uncanny way of doing it, even when my brain forgets the association that I make with someone's face. If I see their face again, I almost like, or even someone who looks like somebody. It happens for me quite a lot, actually. But when it comes to names, people's names haven't the foggiest. People's birthdays haven't the foggiest. I'm absolutely terrible with it. But what was you saying about? She
gave me the autism spectrum disorder diagnosis. She also diagnosed me with generalized anxiety disorder, which I was already previously diagnosed with by therapists in the past. And she said, you probably wouldn't have this much anxiety if you also weren't autistic.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm not entirely sure on the statistics on this.
It's a difficult one because, like, when you think about autism, you can think about it in a way of sort of out of the womb. Our brain. Are we more likely to have anxiety because of the way that we are, or are we more likely to have anxiety because of the experiences that we have, because of the way we are? That's the main thing. Because even when it comes to stuff like alexithymia is actually a symptom as well of PTSD. CPTSD is something that has been talked about a lot within the community. Complex PTSD, sort of that sort of diffuse, sort of over time experience of trauma. And I'm not really sure exactly. I don't think anyone's really sure exactly what comes first. Is it our social experiences that cause us to have anxiety, and sort of the fact that the world's not built for us, or is it generally like differences in our receptors that make us more anxious, pump out more cortisol, more. I think that there has been some research on cortisol receptors in autistic people, so that would explain like the genetic component of it. But I do think that there are a lot of different co-occurring conditions which do need to be looked into more, especially alexithymia. I'd just be interested to see like what is stuff that is caused by our environment. What is stuff that is just genetically that we're predisposed to? That would be really interesting. But that would require research. A lot of people in the autistic community are very anti-research. I'm not anti-research. I think research is useful.
Yes, I've read about it before, but I don't know the exact number. But I know that the majority of autistic people also have anxiety. I think being an autistic person in itself
synonymous
causes a lot of anxiety just because of a lot of the things that we go through, the way our brain works. And then to add to that, being an autistic person in the society that we're living in makes it about 10 times worse.
Yeah.
And I always tried to like treat my anxiety, fix my anxiety, and now I just realize that like I need to work with the anxiety as opposed to trying to get rid of it, because
Yeah.
I've tried to get rid of it so many times and it didn't work, and now it's just more like the acceptance piece, learning how to cope with it in healthy ways and deal with it in healthy ways.
Yeah.
The next thing on my list is eye contact. It's always been really difficult for me and uncomfortable for me, and I don't know, again,
This is a bit of an interesting thing, because I know that difficulty of eye contact's quite a big thing for a lot of people. It's not so much for me. I actually get more anxiety from worrying about other people's interpretations of my eye contact. There's a little bit of a difference. I don't necessarily find eye contact to be that uncomfortable, just what comes after certain types of eye contact, if that makes sense. So for example, like I've noticed that if someone looks very angry and making a lot of eye contact, I need to look away, because generally, like not too much, I don't want to be a pushover, but if I make too much eye contact with people like that, it sort of becomes this weird sort of game for people. But for me, I don't really feel that much from making eye contact. Like if people ask me, you know, to make it, I can do it pretty well and still talk to people pretty well whilst making eye contact, and it's not really that much of an issue for me. It's just other people's interpretations of it. You know, I don't like to, you know, being the height and weight and physique that I am, I'm very consciously aware of, you know, upsetting or making people worry in my presence. I want them to feel comfortable. And so I like actively modulate parts of myself, including eye contact and actually my voice, depending on who I'm around. So if I'm around men, I tend to have this voice, which is my general voice that I have. Whereas if I'm in like a group of girls, I tend to have a little bit more of a higher voice, and I don't tend to have as much boom to my voice. And I just try to, you know, I basically try to not be as scary as possible. And eye contact is a part of that. One thing that is different though is that if I'm trying to actively listen to people, the best way for me to do that is to look away. So if I'm listening to people, I'm staring away, focusing primarily on the audio that's coming into my ears. Whereas if I'm talking, I can make a lot of eye contact and I can, you know, do that. But generally, again, with like the whole cognitively learning social skills and stuff, I tend to default to not making as much eye contact because it's less risky. Like, a little bit of an interesting one. Same. I've been told that my muscles and my eyes, I've got the muscles and eyes of a serial killer. Actively tried to soften so people don't feel threatened. Yeah, exactly. And it's a thing, and people will come to talk to me and, you know, ask if I'm actually listening to them. And what I'll be doing is I'll sit down with them and they're talking to me and I'll be like this, basically just listening to them like this. And then when it's my turn to speak, then I'll talk and I'll make eye contact. But it somewhat requires a little bit of cognitive effort that takes me away from the actual conversation that I'm having, like enough for it to like affect the conversation. And so that's what I do. So it's like people sit down, I've got something to tell you, Tom. Okay, I'm listening. You know what I mean? But that's generally something that I've noticed about my own eye contact. It's a little bit different to most people's. A lot of people struggle a lot. I find it quite painful. I do not.
Is this in relation to my autism, but like I can listen better when I'm not looking someone in the eyes. I can focus better when I'm not looking someone in the eyes, and a lot of times when I'm looking someone in the eyes, it's like a really intense experience. It's like I can feel everything about them. It feels really intimate and uncomfortable and something I don't usually want to be a part of unless it's with like
someone that you're close
very
to.
close family or people who I do feel really comfortable with.
Girlfriends.
Yeah, I just don't like eye contact, and I really wish that we could get to a place in society where eye contact doesn't have to be made in order for that person to think that we're listening or that we're focused or that we're interested.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, I listen and focus better when I am not forced to make eye contact. Okay, two more things on this list.
Cool. We got it.
The next thing I have written down is I research everything so intensely. Part of this, I think, is because of my OCD, and I think research is definitely one of my biggest compulsions when it comes to my OCD, but
It's not a bad one.
there's also another aspect of it, and I think this relates more
Less
to my
hypochondria.
autism, is I'm just a very, very, very curious person. If I don't know how something works, I need to find
Logically.
out. I want to know how things work. It's important for me to know how things work.
Yeah,
One,
and
so I can
that's a really difficult thing when it comes to like the social emotional worlds, because quite often you can't. There isn't like a specific rubric that you need to follow in order to have a good conversation with somebody. That's the problem with like a lot of like specific dating advice and friendship advice, is because you can't actually follow a script. If you do follow scripts and it works, it's probably because you just have a natural aura around you or something. But generally, not the easiest thing to do. Understand something that's incredibly grey, such as social, emotional stuff. I think that's one of the reasons why we can find it so difficult, because there's a lot of stuff in life that we can research and understand on a logical level. But when it comes to the social, emotional world, it is a lot more grey, a lot more complex.
make educated and well-informed opinions on things. And two, I like knowing how things work. It's very interesting for me to find out how different things work, even if it's things I didn't think I would be interested in. So I love researching things. And then the last thing on this list, and of course this list could go on and on and on. These are just the main things that I thought of when I wrote this list. And it's that I listen to the same song over and over and over.
Stimmy songs.
Again, not an autism specific thing, but I do find a lot of
comfort.
What's the word? It's very soothing for me to listen to a song that I find that I enjoy over and over and over. One, because it's predictable, I know what to expect, but also, again, relating back to maybe the synesthesia and the way that music makes me feel and how I relate to music. I just love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. So
that's another really strange thing as well. You know, I was talking about before about how music and our sensory world is different. I could keep talking about this forever and ever, but I'm going to stop. But yeah, like pretty much when it comes to music, I listen to a lot of shouty music. I'm listening to a lot of shouty music now, but they're all songs that I've heard over and over again constantly. So it's almost like my brain sort of gets used to it. Like I can listen to music really, really, really loud in my headphones, but as soon as it's outside, it's other people's music, and it's sort of permeated by different noises and people talking and moving about. That's when it becomes an issue for me. It's predictability. There's also the concept of sensory defensiveness, which basically is pretty much that. It's predictable sensory input. So a lot of autistic people can struggle with hugs. You know, people just hugging them, putting their hands on the shoulder. You know, but at the same time, they may find hugs to be incredibly regulating. But usually, it's something that they would ask for, or they would initiate. If it's something that's not predictable, or something that doesn't come from them, and it causes them distress when it usually would help them, that's when you would call it sensory defensive. It's another aspect of it. You've got the avoidant, you've got the seeking, the defensive, and of course, like things are a lot more complicated in terms of the sensory world than you could just do by filling out a sensory profile like a grid. It's a lot more personal.
I have on this list, not a full entire list. When I had my autism assessment, when I first saw the neuropsychologist, I brought in like a 5-page stapled packet of like just a list of like all these things why I thought I should seek out this assessment, and there were so many other things on that list. Maybe I could make a video on that in the future of like things that led me to seeking out an autism assessment. If that's something you'd want to see, let me know. Otherwise, thank you for watching.
Thank you, Trevor. That was Trevor Carroll. Things that finally made sense after my autism diagnosis. Go check him out. Give him a like. Give him a subscribe. It's a growing channel, doing very, very well. And hopefully we can get him a few more views with this video, Trevor. And if you have enjoyed this, make sure to like, subscribe, and stay tuned. And if you do like these videos, these clips, go ahead and join me on Twitch. Join me on Kick. Sadly, I don't want to do these on YouTube anymore because of the copyright strikes and weird stuff that YouTube does. So this is where we'll be doing it now. But I hope you've enjoyed, and I will see you later. Check out the links. Megan F. Insights stuff. Henley 25. Okay, there we go.